that I think that if it's an anything goes, if there are no limits, if there are no lines, Hussam, then we're living in a world where God help us all. Whatever God you believe in, somebody better help us if there are no lines and no limits anywhere when you talk about free speech.
Well, there has never been free speech without limits, with no limits, even in our own country, which has free speech protected even in our Constitution. There's never been. There are legal limitations, sometimes, such as you can scream or shout fire in a theater when there is no fire. You can defame, try defaming your neighbor, telling him you're a child molester. You'll be sued. And try telling the judge, hey, that was free speech. Good luck. You can't go to school wearing a T-shirt that's racist. You can't use profanity at a school, or you can't speak in court without the permission of a judge. Even if you try to use the excuse of free speech, you'll be thrown in jail. There are other ways of providing or putting some kind of limits on free speech. That could be social pressure. We to terms in America that yes, it is legal to use the N-word, yes, it is legal to be anti-Semitic, but it's not acceptable. It's socially unacceptable. Unfortunately, it's not the same case with anti-Muslim, anti-Arab racism. But I mean, there's a way to create pressure, enough critical mass pressure from society to say this kind of speech is offensive, is provocative in a negative way. There's a third way also. There's the self-censorship. Just because I have the right to say things, it doesn't mean I should say it. Just because I have the right to be racist, offensive, I can use some self-censorship and say that's not a good behavior, that's not a moral behavior. And especially those who are involved in provocative free speech, such as cartoons that offend the prophet, somebody who is the most important figure for 1.6 billion people in the world. Yes, most Muslims will be offended and move on or counter to free speech, but I cannot control 1.6 billion people. There would be people who are ignorant, people are angry, with a lot of other factors building in, who might react in a way that is displeasing to me and obviously to the victims and their families.
Before I go to Sonali, Hussam, how much of this, to your mind, has been and is being used as yet another excuse to cast aspersion on the Islamic faith?
Absolutely. We cannot look at the tragedy that happened in Paris without looking at the context. There's the context of colonialism. France has been most guilty among all other countries in its abuse. Just in Algeria alone, it killed 1.5 million people. Look at what it did in North Africa and Central Africa. France has a long history of racism with Africa and the Middle East, and then you add to it the ongoing marginalization and the anti-Muslim sentiment and anti-immigrant sentiment that exists in France. So it is built to show that it's almost like to say only Muslims get offended when we insult their gods, when we insult their prophets, when we insult their religious figures. This not every people, every race, every ethnicity, every community gets offended when those who are important to it are offended in a way that is completely useless. It is not a political debate. It does not talk about extremism or about ISIS, which would have been legitimate. But this was done purely to offend, with no other purpose.
Roseanne, right quick, then go to Sonali.